Here's a question. When is a horror movie not really a horror movie, but all the promotional material and trailers sell it like it is? Well, when it's this one. I walked in expecting creepy corridors, nightmare fuel, and maybe a few jump scares. I walked out having watched a dark comedy thriller wearing a horror skin suit. This thing has gore, uncomfortable moments, and some genuinely creepy sequences, but it's also weirdly funny and tonally inconsistent by design. And it's not the only surprise this movie has up its sleeve.
I don't understand at all. Why just her classroom? Why only hers?
Where are our children?
Weapons is directed by the same guy who did Barbarian, Zach Krager. It's a bold and unique direction for horror or a dark comedy, even. And there is a lot to like about it. But like I said, if you go in expecting a straight up horror movie, you may be disappointed. It's more like this year's The Monkey with Theo James, just not as obvious in his comedic leanings. But there are funny parts, make no mistake. My theater was busting out laughing quite a bit. I'd say it's probably 70-30 creepy thriller to dark comedy. The story structure is non-linear, with sections being told from different characters' perspectives, kind of like Rashomon or The Last Duel, just without resetting to the beginning of the tale each time. Most characters' perspectives have different starting points, with only a few picking up from the very beginning of the tale. It's an interesting style, and I really liked it. You get a very rounded picture of what's going on with these mysterious disappearances, eventually, but a lot of the finer details, mechanically speaking, are left to your imagination. The film picks up, I think, a month later, after an entire classroom of kids just got up and ran into the night at 2:17 a.m., never to be seen again, all except one child. Their teacher, played by Julia Garner, has naturally come under suspicion as to why her classroom, and hers alone, was affected. School was called off during this time, and it's only now restarting because life must go on. But of course, not everyone is happy about it.
This is where the story really starts.
It's a good starting point, after a decent amount of narration, and the movie keeps the mystery rolling well into the latter half. But it is long. It's a slow burn, and some people might lose patience along the way. I'd say it's almost halfway through before we actually get any horror elements. There are a couple jump scares, whose mileage may vary depending on how susceptible you are to that sort of thing. But when we finally get something like this, we're well into the runtime. I didn't mind, because I like that type of movie to begin with, and the acting and story were strong enough to keep me involved. Visually and atmospherically, it's muted, bleak, and exactly what you'd expect from a horror film, until it isn't. But for the most part, what's presented in the trailer matches up. The score doesn't so much build dread as it builds anticipation and a sense of mystery. The music is unconventional for a typical horror entry, but it works here. It is something that did stand out to me, though. And the acting? Some people came to play horror. Julia Garner's character for me is pretty unlikable, but she nails the tension and stress of a person with their back against a wall. Josh Brolin sells the grief of a parent futilely searching for answers, and is fantastic as usual. Benedict Wong is a convincing school principal, eventually finding himself out of his depth. But others, like Alden Ehrenreich as an unhinged cop, a local crackhead, and others, including the antagonist, are playing roles from a slightly different movie. They're all good to great, don't get me wrong. It's just more of that varied temperament that runs throughout. The little boy who didn't disappear, Alex, does a great job with what he's given, but the character himself and his stoic behavior made me question the believability of what I was watching, just a bit. But here's the thing. Tonally, this movie is all over the map. One minute you're squirming through a tense, bloody sequence. The next you're watching a scene that lands like an inside joke you're not sure you were supposed to hear. Some chapters work brilliantly. Others feel like the director's just daring you to keep up. Opinions on this film are largely favorable, but I'm sure some people are already drafting most overrated of 2025 lists. And I get both sides. The fragmented, shifting perspectives, teacher accused of witchcraft, grieving dad, shady cop, keep you off balance in a good way. But then the comedy cuts in and the horror sort of deflates. It's like they're poking holes in their own tension just to see if you'll stay in your seat. For me, I kind of admire the chaos. It's messy, it's strange, it's a little self-sabotaging, but I'd rather watch this than some safe paint-by-numbers slasher. At least it's swinging for something. but there are dangling plot threads, and a fair bit is simply unexplained. Because the details aren't the important part here, but the overall atmosphere and mystery. In some ways, I kind of prefer it like that. In the end, Weapons wants you unsettled, amused, and maybe slightly annoyed. It's gory, it's offbeat, and it makes no apologies for the fact that it doesn't want to live in just one genre. It doesn't always land, sometimes it trips over itself, but when it works, it really works. In some ways, this is an incredibly traditional horror tale, complete with some of the oldest conventions from the finest of Halloween traditions. And in other ways, this is a totally unconventional take on a horrific event presented in a refreshingly unique wrapper. For me, it's a solid 7 out of 10, almost an 8. The ambition, the weirdness, the willingness to throw curveballs, but the tonal roller coaster and some of the believability, in terms of character behaviors, keep it from hitting that higher mark. It's good stuff, but make sure you're not going in expecting the greatest horror experience since The Exorcist. It's not that. Well, that's all I've got for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.